So we're in this series about letting go. And tonight I want to talk about something that for most of us is really difficult. If you're codependent, unbelievably difficult. No recovery in codependency, honestly impossible. And that is letting go of a relationship that just isn't healthy for you. You could use the word toxic. That might be stronger than what some people want to get into, but I want to talk about those kinds of relationships. And the word breakup, if you go and look at some of the definitions of it, I thought it was kind of interesting, says to cease to exist as a unified whole. You know, that right there speaks volumes, doesn't it? I cannot imagine myself without him, right? I cannot imagine myself without her. I cannot imagine myself without them as my friends. I cannot imagine what it would be like if that relationship changed or if I wasn't able to somehow figure out some way to stay in it. The word disperse. Their example is their partnership broke up. The logical one, to end a romance. Another one, I thought this was interesting, to lose morale, composure, or resolution. Here's the real one for the night. To break into pieces. To bring to an end. To do away with. To destroy. It's a hard word. To break up a monopoly, to disrupt the continuity or flow of, to decompose. You know, decompose that's really tough stuff. I mean, I'm using all those to kind of get us a view of the difficulty of this. What I'm talking about doesn't just relate to relationships. It doesn't really just relationships that we're actively involved in right now. It could be people that we're in a relationship with that aren't here, that have even died. It could be that. It could definitely be people that we are estranged from right now. But the amount of energy that relationship is consuming in us is significant. We offer something called divorce recovery here. And we started it up again this year. And we did that because we know how divorce as a relationship lingers. People keep trying to resolve if they're newly married and they're married to somebody else now. What oftentimes happens is you're going to try to resolve what you didn't resolve in marriage number one over into marriage number two. You're not even really aware you're doing it. It's like literally something that's happening because you're like tracking down this piece of conversation and you're not even aware where it's coming from. And it takes a while, hopefully it's going to happen, but it takes a while where you begin to realize, wow, I'm not really actually talking to you. I'm actually talking to my ex. Has that ever happened to anybody? It doesn't have to be marriage. It could be dating, right? It could be, I remember what my old boss was like. I get a new boss, I go to a new job, but now I'm gonna work to believe that my new boss is exactly like my old boss. I mean, it's uncanny. They're like blood brothers. It's like, are they? Or could it have something to do with what's going on with you? Could it have something to do with what is unresolved in you? One of the biggest pieces of relationships is this. What are your core beliefs? We've talked about these before in this series. Or another way to talk about it is if you've ever done any work with something called schemas, what are your basic schemas? If one of your schemas, for example, is abandonment, you are going to have one heck of a time letting go of anybody for any reason. Amen? You're going to believe, if abandonment is one of your schemas, that if you let somebody go, if somebody walks out of your life, if somebody's no longer your friend, you're going to take that as a deep personal loss. And secondly, you're going to take that as a failure of you. And you're going to start asking questions, right? Here's how they're going to go. What did I do? If it's a romantic relationship, you might say something like this: I don't really understand why it wasn't enough for him. I don't really understand why it wasn't enough for her. Or maybe you're in this relationship with a family member who consistently punishes you, who consistently takes it out on you emotionally, who never has any kind of a way to lift you up or boost you up, never is really here to like feed in, support you, nurture what's going on with you, never going to be supportive of any kind of growth or change you're going to make because, and I know you know relationships like this, right? Where the other person in the relationship has got to be able to find a way to hold you down. Because if they can't hold you down, it's going to impact their sense of what their value is. Have you ever been with somebody like that? It just kills them to compliment you. When they say to you good thoughts, good thoughts. I mean, that always gets on my nerves, but good thoughts. It's like, they don't really mean good thoughts. They mean not good thoughts. I can say what I want to say, but that isn't what they mean. They don't mean good thoughts. When they say have a good day, that's that person in your life. They don't really mean have a good day, right? They're like, I hope your day is hell. I just hope you have a good day. I don't really like you. But in public, I got to act like I do. And they have never in 5 years done anything but unnerve you and cause you to go, what? Here's the question. If you're codependent, you're going to say it like this: what do I have to do for that person to be happy? What do I have to do for that person to be happy, right? And what do I got to do to get them to like me? What do I got to do to get them to like me? Most pastors quit this job in the first 5 years of leaving a seminary for two principal reasons. Principal reason number one, they had no idea that the people they are serving in their church were actually as messed up as they are. I'm serious. They're like, man, this is really a hard job. I really didn't think people were really like this. I didn't think people were this mean. I didn't think people were this out of whack. I didn't really think people would do this stuff to each other. And you're kind of like, look, man, the church is the meanest place on the planet. Especially true if any of you have been a part of a smaller church, man, it is just like feast or famine, isn't it? Everything is either great and everybody loves each other and we're having spaghetti every Sunday night with French bread and some coconut pie or whatever. I don't even like coconut pie, but like whatever it is. Or it is awful and there ain't no pie and no spaghetti for 100 years because we're going to fight it out to the death because this church belonged to my family. It's like, well, the last time I checked in the Bible, I'm pretty sure that the church belongs to Jesus. And they go, well, Jesus was wrong. He really belongs to my family. I'm telling you. Am I right? And you're sitting there and you're like, what is that? But there's going to be a bunch of people in the room, in a church, people in relationships that because of their schema of abandonment cannot figure out that it would ever be okay for anybody in their life to be gone. They would be the person that grieves when the soccer team is over and that same team isn't going to show up and play again together next year. I used to coach. I didn't know anything about it. It was embarrassing. I was trying to coach soccer like you would coach football. It was awful. I still have regrets about what all happened there because it took me the longest time to realize as the coach, I wasn't supposed to be cheering when they were throwing the yellow card. I was, cool, man, cool. They're like, no, not cool. You're not supposed to encourage your girls to get those cards. I'm like, oh, I thought they were just going for the ball. That's what I thought. But, you sit there and you got to the end of the year and there would be 2, 3, 4 girls would cry and cry and cry and cry and cry and cry and cry at the end of the season because they were never going to play together as a team. It's like, I'm sitting there going, you're going to see them next week at the pool. You're going to see them at school in a couple of weeks. It's really going to be okay, but it felt like it was the end. And you think of that as an adult, if your schema is abandonment, it's going to be a hard time. If your schema is unrelenting standards, you're probably going to put those unrelenting standards about all relationships on yourself. Amen? What did I do? What do I need to do? How do I become acceptable to him? Right? How do I become acceptable to her? How do I get my dad to love me? What do I have to do to get my dad's approval? What do I got to do to get my mom's? What do I got to do to get my mom's approval? What do I got to do for her to go, well done? What do I got to do for her? I love you. I'm proud of you. What do I got to do to get my dad to say that? What do I got to do to get my friend to say that? My wife, my husband, my sibling, all of that stuff. In a lot of our cases in family life, if you really think it through, a lot of your relationships with your siblings are not that different as adults as they were when you were young children. Am I right? You think about the nature and the personality and the characteristics that each person in your family had, and think about them as adults, and ask yourself, in the continuum of 30 years, how much has it actually changed? And see, like for most of us, we're trying to figure out a way to change it. We're trying to be good-natured because we're trying to deal with our core beliefs. And our core beliefs are causing us damage in those kinds of unhealthy relationships. I believe out of my core relationship that I've got to be with this person, this man, this woman, this sibling, this parent. I've got to fix that relationship so that I can be with them. Because if I can't be with them, I'm never going to be okay. And again, it goes to this question of recovery, which is, are you saying that if there was nobody else left in your life and it was just you and Jesus, that he wouldn't be enough? Because until you can answer that question about just you and Jesus, you're going to remain vulnerable with all kinds of relationships that you have in your life. Amen? Because anybody can hold you hostage, including yourself and your core beliefs, whether you're actually aware of them or not. So how do I know? Like when I look at my relationships, how do I know which relationship really I got to look at honestly and kind of go, is this a relationship that is going to bring me to deeper serenity and a deeper sobriety? Or is this a relationship where I'm locked into a have to? Like, anybody here got relationships? You don't got to raise your hand, but you know what I'm talking about, right? Where a relationship you feel like you have to have. You got to have it because this person is your friend, and so they're their friend, and you feel like you got to figure out some way to do it. Or their kin, their family. And you just, somewhere along the way, somebody taught you, you don't ever, ever, at any cost, let go of anybody in your family. That's one of the hardest things to learn in recovery. People will go and get serious help. They'll go do 45 days of treatment. They have all kinds of conflicted stuff going on with a spouse, as an example. You go, have you ever thought about the fact that when you get out of treatment, you really ought to think about maybe living by yourself for a while, to continue to work on you, to be able to release yourself from the kind of pressure you're going to put yourself right back into in a relationship that you really don't know how to handle. Well, no, I never thought about that. It's like, well, think about it. Well, I just feel like I've been gone 45 days. I feel like I should be home. Because, well, that's just what I think I ought to do. Because, and the question is going to be, is it good for your sobriety and for serenity for that to happen? And that's what I want us to do looking at relationships. Think about the ones that are the most difficult for you. No one really wants to talk about this. We just kind of want to live with it. right? We will complain to each other. We will talk to each other, won't we, about this person, right, or this person, and they're really difficult, and I don't know what I'm going to do. And you're kind of like, well, what would happen, do you think, if you did something really radical and really different, and you counted the cost of what that person is extracting from you, not from a blame side, but the cost that it's extracting from you? What would happen if you looked at the limitations of the relationship as it is? Like, are there not some people in this world that you're just not going to get along with? Is that fair to say? Because you're wired a certain way. You have a certain personality type. They have another personality type, and they just push every single button you got, right? And you don't know why they do that. And you're like, how do they know? How do they get to me like that? How do they get under my skin like that? What is the story? What do they know about me? It's like, probably nothing. They just happen to show up in your life. I mean, sure, maybe if you're in a highly manipulative relationship with them, maybe they know a lot, and maybe they know exactly what they're doing. But there are people that because of the way they're wired and because of the way we're wired, we're just not going to get along. There's going to be a limitation of what that's all about for me, and the cost for me and my recovery is too high. It's too high. Look at the vision of what comes right out of step one. Look at the vision of powerlessness. It's hard to say, not only do I not like that person, but I don't have any power whatsoever over them. I do not have the ability to persuade them. I'm not going to find some way to manage them into a place with me where we get along, because we're probably not going to get along. We're just probably not going to get along. It's especially difficult to say with family. It doesn't mean that it's not necessary. There's two words that play into this: the word hurt and the word harm. Dealing with a difficult relationship and learning how to say to yourself, it is time that I let this relationship as it stands go. It's not that it's dead forever. Nobody's talking about that. It's that I am going to let this relationship, based on the way it's currently constituted in my life, I'm going to let it go. Because A, it's not my higher power. B, not helping me with my sobriety. Creating resentments, probably. C, not helping me with my peace, with my serenity. Is it going to hurt when I step out of that relationship with them? If they're we had somebody in our group on Tuesday that was talking about a long-term friend, a long-term friend. And he said he finally got to the place of understanding that to be in a relationship with that long-term friend, it just wasn't going to benefit his sobriety. And he had to become willing to become powerless over that truth in order to let that person go. Are you following me? You got to become willing about your powerlessness to let that person go, because you got to be able to say, I'm not going to change them. Like, I'm not going to change them. They're going to come 2 weeks later and tell me the same story they told me today. They're going to come 3 weeks later and they're going to do the same stuff they did today. It's going to be a consistent thing. I'm not going to change them. I'm powerless over that. And yeah, that ending that relationship is going to hurt. But in the long run, it's going to cause me far less harm. And it's honestly going to cause that other person less harm. So hurt versus harm. Like, am I willing when it comes to someone that I don't like or someone that I've been trying to manage, someone I've been trying to manage, am I willing to turn somebody over to God without giving God advice? It's more fun, right, to go that way. It's more fun to go, God, have one of those, one of the grandiose prayers, the grand stream prayer. God, I'm just at my wit's end. I know that you've taken me to this place. You really don't believe that. I know that you've taken me to this place with Johnny, and I now see that I really can't do anything with this relationship with him, and it makes me sad, God, and I don't know what's going to happen to him next if I step out of his life, because secretly, God, I believe that only I can save him. I mean, there's Jesus and all that, but I really think it probably needs to be me. I mean, you didn't tell me that, but I kind of got the hint. And God, I mean, I'm going to turn them over to you. Can you imagine God in these conversations with us codependents? Really? Do you mean it? Are you going to write that down? Are we like going to sign that, what you just said, like blood brothers? I mean, are you really going to do that? Is that really going to happen with your ex-wife? Is that really going to happen with your ex-husband, or is it only going to happen until something else comes up with the kids? And then I just can't stand him, the way he does that. Oh yeah, God, I thought, well, I sort of turned him over. But I needed to give you advice about what you needed to do with him, because today, God, I want you to kill him. That's what I want. But I mean, I'm not resentful or anything. I love Jesus and stuff, God. And I mean, my recovery is right on track, but the only thing I see right now is white. Are you willing to let God do the most bizarre thing? And that is to have God say to you, if you're willing to let her go, I am going to give you a gift. And you want to go, yeah. Am I going to get justice? Is this person really going to get hammered? Are you really going to go after him, God? Because that's really what I want. And God's like, no, I have even a better idea. Are you ready? I would like to go to work on you. No. I turned him over, but I mean, God, I turned him over for you to get him, is what I turned him over for. I didn't turn him over for you to go to work on me. And God's like, well, that's my gift. That's my gift, is I want to work on you. I want to work on your freedom. I want to work on your peace. I want to work on your contentment. I want to work on your serenity. I want to work on your sobriety. I want to work on you. You know how it is, right? When you're if you're married and you're into a full-on marital deal, it's a lot of fun to get in the middle of the right fighting part of it for a little while at least, isn't it? The thing is, if you're a guy, you're an idiot if you think you're actually gonna win. You're not gonna, but you can for about 10 minutes think you are in your mind. You can think you are, but even if you win, you lose, amen? That's the thing about it. Even if you win, you lose. Because God didn't get the chance to go to work on you. So you stayed exactly where you are. All puffed up with your position, but you stayed exactly where you are. Will I let God work on me? And there's a piece of what I'm talking about tonight that absolutely does involve grief. It does involve grief. It does involve the grieving process of giving somebody up. It does involve the process of letting somebody go. It's not easy. It's not quick. It's not clean. It's not clear. It's not orderly. It doesn't have a timetable to it. It's messy. But we got to acknowledge when we're letting somebody go, the grief, do we not? Because in order to let God begin to attend to my heart, I've got to let him go there to my grief. Who do I talk to? When I'm in the middle of something like this, who do I talk to? Well, I can tell you one thing. If you're in the middle, this is for sure true. If you're in the middle of a really tough time in your marriage, make very sure what decision you're making about who to talk to next. Amen? Do not make a decision that, well, I'm going to go talk to my friend that's been in the middle of a really rough divorce for 5.5 months. That would not be a good person to talk to. Talk to somebody who loves Jesus, whether you're a believer or not. Talk to somebody who loves Jesus. Talk to a couple who have learned how to deal with adversity, and talk to a couple who are willing to fight for you and for your spouse. Amen? That's who you need to talk to. Talk to people with legitimate recovery. that have dealt with legitimate adversity, that do believe that Jesus is enough, that are in it as a couple for each other, to build each other up, not to win, and who will be honest with you, who can actually say to you, yeah, are you willing to let God go to work on you? Because what's happening with her really isn't important here. And despite how you're going to explain to me how it is with her, it's not going to matter in the long run to build your marriage. You find yourself in what you're going to call the middle place. And the middle place is, like, I get into a position where I have let somebody go. And like, I don't know if God is going to restore that relationship with them or not. I don't know. I don't know what God's going to do. But I do know that if there is going to be a relationship between my brother and I, or my friend and I, or my wife and I, or my husband and I, or my sister and I, or my person, my boss at work, whatever, what I do know is one thing for sure is I know I'm certainly not going to be able to figure out how to fix it. And I don't know what God is going to make it look like. But I know for sure it's going to look very different than what it did the day I said, God, I'm putting this in your hands. I know that God is not going to give it back to me and say, yeah, you know, Mark, I mean, you were pretty much right about that relationship. Let's just tweak it a little bit and we'll go on. God's going to go, I'm going to completely discombobulate this relationship when I go to work on you, and you're going to feel like you're starting completely over. Like, I've seen people in marriages do stuff like this, where you just get to a place where you go, God, we are out of it with each other. We're going to hand it all over to you. We don't really want to, but we don't have any more choices left, and we're going to lay our hands off of it. And if you're going to put this back, you're going to show me a way that I never imagined this to work. Like, I never thought of this way. Never. Never. I'm leaving you with a gift. Peace of mind and heart, Jesus says. And the peace I give is a gift the world cannot give. Only me. So do not be troubled or afraid. The question tonight is, with a relationship in your life that is really getting the best of you, how long are you going to hang on to it? What do you think you're trying to accomplish? And do you really think you can do a better job in your non-infinite wisdom than the hands of Jesus that have the holes of a cross in them can do with that relationship? Do you really think you can do better? If you do, keep doing what you're doing. If you don't, it's a simple prayer up here. Come up here and kneel and say, you know what, Jesus, tonight I offer up Jack to you. And I'm going to take my hands off of Jack. And I'm going to stop being resentful about Jack. And I'm going to ask you to set me free. And I'm going to ask you to do the work on me. In Jesus' sweet name, thanks so much. Amen.